What's going on, beautiful internet family? My name is Dan Davis and I'm the creative director here at DansTube.TV, as well as Australia's #1 ranked drone YouTuber. And today I've got some details that I wanted to break down about the Mavic 3 Pro's tri-camera system. So as the name suggests, it's got 3 camera systems built into the one unit. They've all got different focal points, which is very interesting. So the main camera system, which is the 4/3 inch CMOS sensor, which is actually a Hasselblad camera system. This guy can actually capture 20 megapixel stills and it's a 24mm equivalent. Then if we go to the medium telephoto camera system, this is capable of 48 megapixels or 12 megapixel stills. It's a 1/1.13 inch CMOS sensor and it's equivalent of 70mm for that guy. That's the 3x zoom. And then we've got the 7x zoom, which is the telephoto camera system, which we saw on the Mavic 3 as well. That's a 1/2 inch CMOS sensor capable of 12 megapixel stills, and it's an equivalent 166mm. So really cool offerings here. We've got the 1x, the 3x, and the 7x, but it also can actually go up to 28x with digital zoom. So I want to show you some little tips and tricks that you might not have known. I want to show you how active track works on each camera system, because they actually have a different kind of offering. And I will say that you will notice some differences there, as well as the actual stabilization. Like when you are in that 7x and maybe when you're in the 28x digital zoom, you will notice some differences with the stabilization, as you would expect, because you're zoomed in so significantly. But I thought I'd just make this standalone video just to show you some of those things that you probably don't know about the Mavic 3 Pro camera system. Okay, so I've got the bird up in the sky, the Mavic 3 Pro. This drone is honestly remarkable. It's crazy what they've been able to do with technology over the years. But I thought for this test, perfect example. You can see where I'm flying from. I've got a crazy amount of range on this golf course in the distance here. But this is a prime example of when you would actually be using the different zoom options on the Mavic 3 Pro. So you can see I'm 70 meters in height, so I've got that nice legal height away from everyone, keeping mindful that there are a few trees around, so I want to be mindful of any potential birds and anything that might get in the way. I'm also going to make sure I'm over land, so that if anything does happen, let's touch wood, I'm very close to wood, there we go, I just touched wood, that, you know, it would be landing over some grass. So here we go, we can see that I've got some decent range and I can see some people moving over here. So this is a prime example of when you would punch into that 3x, and you can see that you've now got a nice kind of framed shot here of people in the distance, but I'm still far away from them. So if I punch into 7x, you can see right there, look at that, that's some awesome opportunities that I may have. Obviously this is just an example with golfers, but you know, apply it to whatever context you want to apply it to. And you can see that I've got perfect range, the quality is still fantastic, and I can still keep a nice distance away. So that's what we're looking at with 7x. If I press 1x, you'll see that's the distance I'm away from them. So I'm clearly a safe distance away from these people. But you know, I'm allowing myself that range to make sure that it still looks, you know, usable, but I've got that safe distance. The other thing that's really cool about the 3 and 7x is it does give a completely different like look and perspective. So you can see there's a lot more layering to the image. So I can see in the distance, there's some smoke in the distance over that mountain there. I can see all the layers of the trees and the properties and everything else. And punching into 7x, I can then enhance that a little bit more again, and I can really amplify that smoke in the distance. And it does create a very cool perspective. But then again, if I go to that 1x, you can just see it doesn't really look like anything. It doesn't give us any context at all. So that zooming functionality is remarkably useful in lots of different scenarios, and it does give a completely different look to a lot of your shots. So especially like if you think about real estate, if you were to capture real estate videos, typically you would be with that 1x and you'd have to fly in really close to the property to be able to capture anything usable. But to be able to get that layering and to fly a distance away but then have the different layers to the 3 and 7x, it just definitely adds a new perspective to it. And as I was saying before, there is the digital zooming option. So like I said, there's 1, 3, and 7, but what you can do, so let's keep it on the 1 times, and this is just in the normal video mode here, just normal video mode. What you can do is you can press and hold on that 1 times, and then you can actually almost scrub down or scroll down to get the different zooming points that you're looking for. So that's the same. If I go into 7 times, I can press that button there, take me into 7 times. That's the default 7 times zoom, but I can press and hold and it will give me the equivalent. So it's going from 168mm, and then I can zoom in to 672mm. That's 28 times zoom. You can see the quality dip significantly here. And then if I do move left and right and up and down, you can see the smoothness, and also the autofocus is going to be a little bit off. You can obviously tap and try to get that right focus point. But again, you're losing a lot of that. If I just, for example, tap on 7, you can see we get that quality back in, but we're not getting that that zoom that we were getting before. So in that scenario, you just fly a little bit closer, because again, if we look at the context of where I am compared to where these people are, I am well and truly away from these people. So you can come in a little bit closer there, do the 7 times, and then I'm going to get kind of a similar effect, and I can see the people walking in the distance there, but without having that major loss of quality. You can see as I'm zooming in, 14, 15, like this is all digital zoom right here. So it's basically just cropping the image, but you are losing the quality there. So that's just something to keep in mind, that you can press and hold and get that different zooming point if you want the digital zoom. If you want something a bit more seamless, you can press the icon on the far right above the record button, that movie option, and you can click on explore. And now this will actually seamlessly allow you to jump between the different zooming modes. So it will allow you to actually go, so with the 1 times, you can see I can press that, go into the 3 times, and I find that this is a lot smoother actually than just the normal video mode. It seems to allow you to have some more control here. You are limited though, unfortunately, with 4K 30 FPS. This may change with firmware updates in the future, but you can see you are limited to just one option here, where in the video mode you have all of the options. But here we can go into that 14 times, and you can see very seamless. But then I can press it again and go into 28 times. So even in this mode here, if I want to look at the people just a bit lower here, I can press and hold on that 1 times, and I can drag in, and you can see it kind of punches in between you can actually notice when it kind of jumps to that new camera system. So that's all digital zoom with the 1 times, and then straight when you go 3, you can see it actually jumps in, and that's it going to the next camera, and it's the same with the 7 times. You can see the difference between the digital enhancement of the zoom to then straight when I hit 7, boom, you can see it goes to a different camera. But this actually works really well. It's seamless, which is quite impressive. You're not really noticing any of the major like delays, I guess, that you do get when you're in the other mode. So yeah, just have a look at that. When I can literally scrub between those, and it is very fast. Even when I tap 1, 1 to 3 to 7, it's a lot faster. And then an example of what the difference would be like, if I jump over to the normal video mode, I press 3, which I just pressed when I said 3, you can see there is a slight delay there. It does take a little bit longer. Well, that was the digital zoom. There you go. So you can see, pressed on 3, takes a little while, press on 1, takes a little while. So there is a little bit of delay there, but then you can go into, the 5.1K, the Cinema 4K, 4K up to 60. So there are obviously trade-offs between the 2 different modes, but just keep in mind that Explore mode does give you that option to be a little bit, I guess, more seamless with those different zooming options there. Now, what I wanted to show you here is just how the stabilization goes, because this is a 3-axis gimbal, advanced 3-axis gimbal. Like DJI have been making gimbals now for years. But we can see that when I'm in 1 times, I've got it in sports mode, I can fly forward, right and left, and up and down, and you can't even really notice any sort of movement. It's very smooth. Now, if I punch into the 3 times, you can see here, I actually really like the 3 times, and the 3 times is the unique offering from the Mavic 3 Pro. It's the first time it's ever been offered on a DJI drone. You can see when I go right and left, it is still very smooth. You can notice when I go forward, left, right, up and down, it does keep it, relatively smooth, and it's not an overly windy day today. But then when I punch into the 7 times, this is where you might notice just a little bit of, let's say, awkward movement. It's not terrible, but I do notice when the wind is picking up, that's where you really do notice those little subtle movements. You've got to be really mindful when you're flying here to fly smoothly. In today's scenario, it's actually not too bad because I think the wind isn't crazy bad today. So today is actually a really good example of how it works in a perfect scenario. There's actually no wind where I am, which is kind of wild. But yeah, for this kind of scenario here, it seems to be fine. The thing that I did notice, like I said before, is when it's a windy day and you're zoomed in at 7 times and you are doing those faster movements, you do notice a little bit of that kind of jumping up and down, just a little bit. You know, it's nothing crazy, but it is a little bit more noticeable. And the other thing is, because it's zoomed in, I do find that occasionally, very occasionally, it will, you know, maybe try to struggle to find that focus point, which, you know, is, I guess, kind of expected because you're zoomed in and there's so much more going on, as opposed to, you know, having this kind of range and then focusing in on a tree, you know, like over here, for example. It's like, you know, it's probably going to be a little bit more reliable in that kind of scenario. So let's just have a look at the active track now. So I've focused in on this tree and you can see that it's lost the point, but it's still focusing in on the rough location. So as you would know from any other drones you've tested in the past, like extremely reliable with scenarios like this when you are putting it in the active track mode. Now, what I will say is when you go into that 3 and 7 times, you do notice that it can struggle just a little bit. I think the 7 times in particular is the one that struggles with the active track. Just, again, purely because it's like zoomed in at a more significant rate and there's probably more detail in what's going on. You know, you've got more focus in on everything in the background and whatnot. So let's try something a little bit more challenging. We're going to try this person walking here. Don't know if that picked them up. I think they might be a little too small. Okay, let me fly in a little bit closer to this person. But again, so good having that 3 times zoom, I don't have to worry about it. So I'm going to try to preemptively plan ahead of them. Let's see if we can get them. Struggling to get them, they're so small. Come on. Come on, let's do it. Okay, there we go. So that's at the 3 times zoom. You can see it's doing a pretty good job, but as you saw, it took a little while to pick up on them. So the other alternative is obviously just to fly a little bit closer to them. But as I start to fly away, let's see. Okay, so it's already lost. This is the example I was talking about. It's already kind of lost that person, where I don't find that this happens when you're just in the 1 times default. Again, you know, it is a larger sensor and you are also flying typically closer to the person because you're not zoomed in. So this is just an example of what I was saying. So it's pretty much lost that person. It obviously didn't recognize it as a person, and there is a little icon that pops up when it knows that it's a person. Let's try the 7 times, and I'm going to try to get it bang on. Okay, so it's got them pretty much bang on this time. So let's see, they're not moving, so this might actually do all right, but again, you can see the movement is, you can see that kind of like, whatever you would call it, strafing, I guess, like the up and down, and I'm going pretty slow here, so let's pick up the pace and fly back a little bit. It's actually done a pretty decent job here, but you can see the location pin has pretty much lost what I want it to focus on, which is that person. And again, you know, it is a very small object that I'm trying to track. When I go around the other way, it seems to be doing pretty well. If I fly up, let's see if it keeps it on. You can see that it's just slightly off. And this is kind of the example I was saying. I find that the 7 times can be a little bit almost bouncy, I want to describe it as. So the person's moved and it hasn't picked up that it's a person, and it's just keeping that same location pin that I was on. So let's just close out of that. So let's try something a little bit different here and see how it goes with a tree, because that was the example I did with the 1 time zoom. So there's a tree in the distance. That's 7 times. Let's see how it goes when I fly to the left. Again, a little bit of that bouncy. That's kind of what I was describing, a little bit of that bouncy movement. And you'd imagine it would be even more amplified or magnified when you actually do have a bit more wind in the area. Because it is a larger object, it seems to be going a little bit better here, which is nice to see. So yeah, this is just something I kind of wanted to talk through, because you do have those, you know, the different kind of focus points, I guess. Like when you're at a 7 times, you can see you're seeing it's a completely different image, right? Like you're looking at something completely different. If I go to the 1 times, this is actually where the drone is in relation to that tree and in relation to that person over there. So it is a completely different thing that you're asking it to do. But let's see if we can actually get it a little closer to this person. Let's see if it can actually pick up on the person as a person. Because to me, that would be when you're going to get the most reliable footage. And a lot of the time, you know, you can get pretty smooth stuff without even using the active track, you know, like especially when you know what you're doing. Let's try to get in with the 7 times, just so I've really got to focus on this guy. I got it bang on. Let's see. No, didn't even pick him up. Again. Okay. I'm trying to see what I mean. It can be a little bit more fiddly, where I find that when I'm on that 1 times, it never seems to have these issues. So I'm just going to wait until he's standing a bit more still. Okay. So this is just me sitting still, tracking this guy as he's moving. You can see that the tracking point isn't actually on the and it's already lost him. So you can see this is kind of what I wanted to show in this video, just how it can be a little bit more unreliable when you are in that 3 and 7 times zoom, which I don't know what I was expecting. I thought that it would maybe be a bit more reliable. I thought that it would be fine in those kind of scenarios, but that was something that I noticed that was quite interesting. I'm also curious to see how it goes when you go between the zoom points. So for example, like if we're on the 7 times, and then we zoom in just a little bit more, you know, now this is now digital zoom at this point. We're at 11 times. So focus track unavailable and current zoom ratio. So there you go. So it actually won't even allow you in the digital mode to do any sort of tracking. So you have to limit it to 1, 3, or 7 times if you want to go into that tracking option for yourself. Yeah, the other thing as well is, I guess, just to show you, in case you were curious, if you haven't got this drone, all of this is applicable in the photo option as well. So you can go into the photo and you can still press and hold and go between. Oh, it's actually not letting me do that. Oh, there we go. I just lied. You can't actually do the zooming options in between. So it does limit you. Yeah, when you're in the photo mode, you can only go 1, 3, or 7 times. You can go into the video option here from the explore mode, and you can use the other options as well if you want. But this is where you can zoom in a little bit, and let's see if it does still limit you. Yeah, so you can't use focus track at all when you're in the explore mode. So yeah, it's just interesting because a lot of these little things you probably wouldn't know about before you purchase the drone, right? It's like this kind of stuff is the nitty-gritty, the little fine details that might not get spoken about as much. But it is, you know, pretty important information to know if you want to buy a drone like this. So yeah, so I can confirm the explore mode works for all of those different modes, photo, video, and all the other ones. And you are limited with the focus tracking, which is the active track mode basically. You're limited to the 1 times, 3 times, and 7 times, which is the actual zoom points of the, or the focal length, I guess, of the actual systems themselves. So yeah, that's pretty interesting to see. So let's just have a little crack one more time. I'm going to pull it down just a little bit. I want to try one more 7 times just to see if I can track this person here and actually get some relatively usable tracking as they're walking. So I'm not going to move the drone, I'm just going to see how it goes. And again, you can see the movement is a little bit, I guess you would say jerky a little bit when she started moving there. So let's see, it's kind of like dun dun. It's like a little bit robotic with the movement. It's not overly smooth. And, you know, this is something that I guess I wasn't expecting. I didn't really know what to think when I tested this out. But as I start to fly away, oh, it's already lost the subject, so I can't even test that. But let's try to get this person back in the shot again. And I'm just going to try to fly away. It's lost them again. So you can see just not overly reliable tracking people. The other thing I want to show you now is I might get someone in the distance like this. I'm just going to fly up and away and see if I get some of those movements that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, you notice a little bit of it, but it's not as bad today. It was definitely worse when it was windier the other day. You can get it relatively smooth by just counteracting the movement, and you can get something relatively smooth. You can see a little bit of that kind of subtle movement up and down, which I guess is relatively expected. But yeah, hopefully this has been an interesting insight for you. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to test within these different modes here. The other thing let's just quickly see is slow motion. Yeah, so slow motion doesn't allow you to zoom in at all. It's locked out where it's at. Explore, like I said, limits you to just basically the different modes, but you can't really do too much else with the resolution. It's just locked out with that as well. So yeah, it is kind of interesting to see just these little subtle differences that you don't normally get to see when you check out a drone. This is an interesting example because this is what most drones would see, this kind of, I guess, zooming point, or this kind of yeah, equivalent range that you'd be seeing from a camera system. This is like just the 1x default, which a lot of drones would have this kind of look, which, you know, you're probably used to this kind of look. But straight when you hit onto the 3x, because I know that there's Brisbane City in the distance there, you get a little bit more of a unique perspective there, because you can see all those skylines, you can see the you know, the towers and the mountain in the background, so it gives you a bit of a unique perspective again. And then you punch into the 7x, and that's where you get something very unique that you couldn't get. And that's perfect with the plane flying in the distance. That's a paid actor in the distance. Thank you for that one. So yeah, that's an example of where you would be using something like that to get a very unique perspective. And then, like I've told you, you can then press and hold and punch in a little bit more and get that zoom distance there, which is kind of wild to me because, you know, Brisbane City from where I am right now is probably like a 30-minute drive and I'm using a drone and zooming in, and yeah, it's not crazy usable at 28, but 7x is definitely usable. That is fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I do appreciate all of the amazing support, and I will talk to you in the next one. Peace.